Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mortgage Coach Friday Mastermind. Every Friday, 9 o'clock Pacific, we are here to bring value, whether it's bringing a top loan officer to interview, special guests, special authors. Today, we have two special guests. We have Dave Gallegos, who's been on this call countless times, one of the industry's top branch managers, leaders in the industry. Dave, welcome to being a guest on today's call.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here. I'm really excited.
Well, looking forward to it. And then this is a little different because Dave had reached out to me and said, Dave, I've read this book. I think it's super important. I could get the co-author on today's call. So we do have the co-author, Paul Reilly. Paul, welcome to the Mortgage Coach community.
Great. Dave, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the call today.
Good. Well, we're looking forward to learning more about value-added selling. Also, I've got my regular co-host, Todd Bookspan. It's pretty unusual. We got both of us on the call at the same time. What's up, my man?
I'm so excited to actually be here and be part of a call with you. And it's actually great to see Dave again. I don't think most people know that when we first started the Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind, Dave was one of the mentors, and apparently, we were fortunate enough to have Michelle and Jen stick, and Dave kind of faded off because he's so busy doing what he does. So it's great to have you back here, Dave. And I talked to you last week, and I saw you last week in Colorado for a couple of days. I know how passionate you are about this conversation. So I'm just grateful that you brought Paul to the community and that you're here today to share, because this is going to be a game changer for most of you who are here.
Yeah. So we do have high expectations, which puts the pressure on you, Paul and Dave, that you're just going to solve all our problems. I mean, in today's market, price compression is an issue, which means there's more families rate shopping than ever, and there's more lenders that are, they're just having issues, with, hey, I know you're getting calls from families going, hey, I know you did a great job, and I really appreciate it, but I found someone that has an eighth lower in interest rate, or I have someone that has a quarter lower in interest rate. So hopefully you guys are going to deliver. I do want to set the table for Mortgage Coach members. I'm going to share my screen real quick, and if you guys could just confirm you see it. And I just want to remind you, for just a couple minutes, how everybody on this call, you're an active Mortgage Coach member, you are sitting on an opportunity to deliver value versus price. And before we get into the conversation, I want to set that up. And part of that value versus price is how you communicate with the family. Let's face it, in today's market, people don't just want emails and phone calls, and you can't get in person with everyone. And let's face it, they're living on their mobile devices. So you gotta show up differently. You gotta communicate differently. And then when it comes to delivering rates and fees, call it your price. Delivering it with a fee worksheet isn't value. That's a commodity. And by the way, it's also not a multi-channel way to do it. So as a mortgage coach, and Paul, this is a heads up for you, everybody on this call has our technology so they can deliver rates and fees with graphs and charts. So it's an educational experience. Now one of the challenges, Paul, and I hope you and Dave get to it, is that they don't do this consistently. Like they'll wait until they're getting grinded, and then they'll say, oh, let's get the family the total cost analysis. They're not delivering to each and every family this best modern experience. They're just going, oh, here's your rate quote versus here's your mortgage experience. So just a reminder to everybody on this call, whether you're meeting a family in person and you're sitting down with them, make sure you're getting them that total cost analysis. Make sure that they're downloading your mobile app. So now you can engage in a richer experience, a better educational experience, and you could go from price to advice. Instead of being your number one weapon to win with a rate shopper is a price exception, make your number one weapon the way you show up, the questions you ask, the overall experience. So with that said, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm really going to turn it over to Dave Gallegos. Todd and I will jump in if we have a question or we have some color that we can provide. And Mr. Gallegos, why don't you take it from here and show everybody how to win more business.
Thanks. So thanks, Dave. And that's a great introduction. The reason I called you was because of this philosophies in this value-added selling ties right into the Mortgage Coach community. The idea of a total cost analysis is, as I've told you before, and not trying to plug Mortgage Coach, you know how fanatical we are about using it here. It taught me how to explain mortgages to people and show them how to get the best mortgage. And when you're passionate about doing that with your clients, you're adding value, and that's what this is all about. So just a little preemptive. So I'm in the Masters Coach, Building Champions Masters Coach group this year, and margin compression, you know, it's on everybody's mind. And all the people that are getting in the business, there's talk of Amazon getting in mortgage and all of that stuff. This book was recommended. I bought it. A couple of days later, after it showed up, I'm at my house. I'm a Yankee fan. I'm turning on the Yankee game and I bring this book out because I'm going to start reading the book because I'm interested in it. And I'm not exaggerating because this is really funny. This is the introduction, and you can see that I highlighted something in the introduction. And I don't know that I've ever done that. But I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to just read it. There's nothing new about the problem of price concessions. Salespeople have faced price issues for centuries. An art critic by the name of John Ruskin wrote this: there's hardly anything in the world that some men cannot make a little worse and sell a little cheaper. And the people who consider price only are that man's lawful prey, P-R-E-Y, prey. John Ruskin was an art critic who died January 20th, 1900. Think of that. So he had to have said it in the 1800s. He didn't say it on his deathbed, right? So you know that this has been around forever. And when I read that, I was like, wow, this is going to be good. And so I just wanted to introduce it with that. So I read the book, fanatical about it. You know, I got really passionate. I did a sales meeting on sales training on it. And then I reached out on LinkedIn and found Paul. And so I called him and said, this is really good. Would you be interested in sharing this in our community? And so, Paul, I just wanted to thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this call. So thanks.
Absolutely. No, it's great to be here.
And so when I first called you, this is what was funny about this. And now that this is the first time you and I've met on screen. When I said to you that in the mortgage industry, there's this, you know, everybody's talking about margin compression, you laughed. and I thought that was interesting and I can't remember exactly what you said. But I said, yeah, there's this thing called margin compression. And I think you said something like, well, what they should be calling it is profit reduction or something. Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, I think it was profit reduction. And there's a couple of reasons I laugh. One of the reasons you mentioned that quote by Ruskin, where people have been dealing with price forever, and every industry faces price resistance, whether it's the mortgage business, banking, financial services, industrial distribution. Everyone is facing price objections. I mean, when's the last time one of your customers called you up and said, Dave, you know, your rate is almost too low. Would you mind raising it? It just doesn't happen. The price is always going to be too high. And so I laughed because it just shows that it's always something new, but also it's something old as well that we all experience.
Well, and so that kind of leads me to the next. So the first chapter in the book was called Facing Reality. And I read through the whole book, but I really think that this was my favorite chapter because of all the realities. And the first reality was that if you're in sales, you will hear price objections. The first reality is like, so that's where, and that was it. But it seems like, and you've got a company that just trains on this subject. That's what's really fascinating. And I think that's what's really intriguing about all of this is that I don't know that in the time that I've been in the industry, except for Dave Savage's product, which is add more value, that we don't really talk about this. And our industry is maybe kind of famous for not being very good at training our people. And it's one of those things where you pick it up. If you're good, you'll make it. And if you're not, there's not a lot of training that goes into true sales training. Yeah. And so talk about those realities, because we can hit on any of these that you want to, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on those.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the first one I think is important. In sales, we should never be surprised when we hear your price is too high. You're going to hear them. You're going to hear lots of them. You are going to lose some business because of price. And I'm here to tell you that's actually a good thing. If you're not losing a certain percentage of your deals because of price, you're not charging enough for the value that you do deliver. All right. Yeah. Right. you should lose business because of price. And in our research, and one thing you probably noted in the book, we believe that 1 out of every 6 customers is what we consider a true price shopping customer. All right. And this is taken more of like from a meta-analysis of several Nielsen studies on selecting cars, selecting airlines, credit cards, different consumer products. They found that about 12 to 15% purely focus on price. Now, if 1 out of 6 purely shops on price, that also means that there's probably a top 1 out of 6 that purely buys on value. Dave, if you were to look at some of your client base and some of your customers you've had over the years, you've probably noticed that there are some customers and clients that probably don't even ask you about the interest rate. They probably they probably just want to get it done.
Yep.
This is the business we want more of. And for the bottom 1 out of 6 that focus on price, that's business we want our competition to have.
That's an excellent point. I'm one of those customers. So when I buy a service or pay for a service from somebody for anything, I'm the guy who wants no hassle. I want you to do what you said you would do at the price you said. I just want it done. Just take care of me. Yeah. You're right. Talk more about that. That's what you're looking for, is that guy that's just like, I just want you to take care of me. Don't hassle me, right?
Absolutely. And you bring up another great point. Price sellers tend to be price shoppers themselves. This is a recent study we did. We actually went out, analyzed top achieving salespeople, various industries. And one of the questions we asked these salespeople was, when you're personally buying products, just like you mentioned, how much do you focus on price? Do you ask for, a discount? People that were more likely to ask for discounts were also more likely to give discounts when selling. You're able to relate the two questions. So that actually brings me to one of the other realities. And I think this is the most important one, and that is your attitude drives your behavior. As a salesperson, if you are sitting on a call, if you're getting ready to call one of your clients and you say, okay, well, man, interest rates are going up, or man, this is where we're at with interest rates, and you're only focused on interest rates, and you say, you know what, I can't sell unless I've got the absolute lowest rate, or this customer only buys on rates, you're naturally going to focus on trying to sell based on your interest rate versus the value you deliver. But if you have a positive attitude about what you're selling, I create a better overall end-to-end mortgage experience. I make it smooth. I make it seamless. I make it easy for my clients to get into one of the most important items they're ever going to purchase. I'm excited about this. You're not going to have as much price resistance. So your attitude will drive your behavior. And if you view price negatively, right, and say, well, we just got to have the cheapest rate, you're going to have a hard time selling value.
In any industry, right? Like, this isn't common. So, and some of the companies I noticed on your website, that some of the companies that you guys consult with, these are like high level professional, like, big contract sellers. These aren't like one-off, real estate agent transactions or mortgage. Not that that's not a big deal, but it's you're high level stuff. So I would imagine that in an industry, in a field like that it becomes an even more difficult task to train people up to that level. Am I right?
It's, I find most of the time we're training the mindset, right? Where if you're selling something that is viewed as a commodity product, and you could say you guys are selling money, that's perceived as a commodity product. But when you bundle that product with your value-added services, your expertise in the mortgage industry, how you serve that customer, all of these things are built into your total end-to-end solution. And the commodity product side of it is only one aspect of your total solution. All right. But this is a challenge that you face in every industry, any organization, to show you just how bad price resistance has become. I read an article the other day in the Wall Street Journal that said that high return for marijuana growers is starting to wither, and that marijuana growers are now facing price objections. So even like the drug dealers are dealing with it. That's okay. So it's gotten bad, right? But it happens in every industry.
That's funny. Even the drug dealers. All right. Well, so let's go. And I sent you a list of these questions. I'm going to just go. I'm not going to go in order. one of the things that in the 10 realities that they talked about was that preparation builds confidence, and that the person who's better prepared for some of the other ones, salespeople create their own misery. The one, volume is no substitute for profit. I think this is one, especially in our industry, where companies have done a disservice to all of us by saying things like, we got to maintain our volume, so we're going to lower prices. And you talk about, or we're going to lower our margins, and we're going to get more business. Talk about that, because the profit motive here isn't an evil motive. And I think at some level, that's something that people take for granted, that profit somehow isn't part of this discussion, right? And talk about that one.
Yeah. No, value-added selling and crushing price objections, it's good for your company, and profit is good. The last time I checked, if you looked at all your, the Mortgage Coach members, each one of their websites ends with .com, not .org. They're a for-profit company, right?
Right.
So building a profit is a good thing, and it's good business, because being profitable allows you to reinvest. It allows you to become more professional, create a better experience for your customers. But sometimes salespeople forget the impact, right? The impact of what a discount is. Every time you discount, whether it's 10 basis points, an eighth of a basis points, whatever it is, that is pure profit coming out of your company, right? And it might sound like, oh, that's just 10 basis points. Well, that is pure profit that is now not going to your bottom line. And so people sometimes think we can make it up in volume, right? The more loans we get, let's lower the price, let's do this. But we always have to remember that whenever we're discounting, it's pure profit coming from the organization. I'll tell you, there was a article I read recently. It was in the Harvard Business Review. It's an old article, but it was new to me. It was called Managing Price, Gaining Profit. And in their research, they found that with a company with average economies of scale, all right, a 1% price decrease could negatively impact operating profit by 11%. So a simple 1% decrease in price led to an 11% drop in operating profit. But here's the kicker. That also works on the upside. So a simple 1% increase also led to an 11% increase in operating profit. And that's with average economies of scale.
Well, and there's a great quote in here, and I can't remember where.
Hey, Dave, real quick, before we pass,
go ahead.
What Paul just said, this is so important. So, Paul, in our industry, loan officers, their compensation is not negatively impacted when they provide a price exception. And there's compliance reasons for that.
Yep.
And loan officers, in our community, by and large, our loan officers, branch managers, regionals, and really the P&L is impacted at the regional level, and most branch managers and loan officers are. So it's like giving out that price exception is like, no problem. Yeah. I mean, other than how much grief am I going to hear from my manager, or what's my quota? But guys, here's my message. If you're on this call watching it and you're a loan officer, did you just hear what was said? This is, you're on a team. You're with a company.
Yeah.
And when you give that price exception, and by the way, if you gave the price exception, you delivered a total cost analysis, you delivered a great experience, and you did your best, that's okay. We understand that. But you know what? If you just quoted a rate, you didn't do your best, you didn't deliver it, it may not hit your comp on this deal, but it is hurting you. Like one of the challenges in our industry right now is loan officer comp, and the fact that loan officers are going to make less money. And loan officers, I can only tell you, if you're on this call and if you are not leading your company with the least amount of price exceptions, you're not doing your part to be a team player. So again, unless you're in this market, I want to connect to our community of mortgage professionals. It is time for every one of us. I'm a leader and speaker in the industry. I'm the leader of Mortgage Coach. I'm telling you, you need to value sell like never before. You need to do it for your company. And then, by the way, the technology companies that are lenders that have call center loan officers, they're coming at our space, local referral-based loan officers. And if you're not value selling, it's going to cost your pocketbook. It's going to hurt your company, and you're not going to kill it. So anyways, I just wanted to tie that to that message that you made around how price matters to the profits, because, you know, it's such an important point, and every loan officer needs to recognize that every time you do a price exception, it's costing your company a whole lot of money.
Well,
David.
and again, you brought up a great point. And so what I've had this discussion a couple of times. We can make an extraordinary income in this business, and whatever, you know, look at whether it's you or look at one of your top producers in your organization. Everybody has a pretty good idea what everybody's comp plans are. And just, would it be mind blowing to have that paycheck, whatever that top producer is? My question is always this: how good should you be at this business, at this job, to earn the kind of income it's possible to earn in this business? Because we're not talking about people making 50 grand a year and 75 grand a year. We're talking about people having the ability to do that in 30 days. So my point is that you should be excellent at this job. Back on the profit thing, in reality number 7, I loved this. It said, profit is not a dirty word. It is indeed the lifeblood of your company's ability to reinvest in its future. It's a great quote. The profit you garner in the form of a higher price is an investment that your buyer makes in receiving greater value from your company in the future. We all want to be, most of us in the mortgage coach community, we're all interested in being here long term. We talk about client for life and lifetime client management and everything else. If the company isn't profitable, we're not going to be here to be able to do that. So I think those are the things that can make up the difference when it comes to that stuff. So I'm going to switch subjects now and talk a little bit about, I love the example about the real estate agent that got the phone call, but how salespeople are typically their own worst enemy. You touched on this a little bit based on the mindset, but the example, could you share that example on how that works when the real estate agent got the phone call about the listing?
You know, it's funny. I've got a couple of real estate examples, and I'd love to share them. But
if you have any mortgage ones, we'd love those.
I know. I'm trying to think of mortgage ones to go along with it, but there's a couple. I'll share a more recent one, a real estate example that highlights. You know, as salespeople, we sometimes are the misery of our own existence. And I say that meaning sometimes we care more about price than the customer does, right? We make a bigger deal out of price. And so when you look at one of the realities of dealing with objections is we've got to acknowledge that, and we've got to make ourselves aware of that. Now, this one realtor, for example, she did a wonderful job of calling attention to some pressure points to help take the focus off of price. And it's an example of my brother-in-law. He was going to buy a home, and this happened a couple of years ago. And when him and his wife walked into the home, all right, they did the first thing you're not supposed to do. Right? It's an open house. It's a Sunday. They walk in and they just kind of look around like, wow, this is it. This is the house. And who do you think saw that the whole time? The realtor, of course, listing it. And so she came over, started talking to them. And they walk around the house, and she starts asking questions to really understand the pressure that they're feeling to buy this house. She doesn't focus on price or what they're listing it at. She just asks some questions. And so she asked my brother-in-law, so tell me, how has your house hunt been going? And my brother-in-law, who is too honest for his own good, he said, you know, we've been looking for a while, and we just can't find anything in our price range that has all the things that we want, except for when we saw this, right? This has everything that we need, right? There, she knows there's a pressure point. Next question she asked, well, what's your time frame for moving in? And his wife then said, well, we got to be in by the end of summer, right? And here it was, middle of July. She said, I'm a teacher. I want to be in by the end of summer. And so there's another pressure point in her favor. And then finally, the realtor said, okay, well, you've been looking. There's not much out there. You said you want to be in by the end of summer. What's your current living situation? And that's where my brother-in-law got a deflated look over his face, and he said, that's the problem. We sold our house 6 months ago, and we're living with my in-laws, right? That in and of itself, right? That was the big pressure point. And as the salesperson, the realtor, then recapped all of these pressure points, she made the buyer aware of them, right? She said, well, just to recap, you like this house. It's in the area that you're looking at. There's not much out there right now. You mentioned that your current living situation is less than ideal and you want to be in by the end of summer. Well, if you're interested in this home, I suggest reaching out to your agent because we've already received a couple of offers and this house will likely sell quickly. They made an offer. They made an offer at full asking price and they got the house. It's the house they live in today. In sales, sometimes we get too focused on price and we think price is more important than it actually is. Rather than focusing on price though, we need to identify the other things that are important to customers. Yet if we have a negative attitude about price and we just focus on it, then we tend to discount more, right? And in fact, we have found that salespeople rank price as more important than customers. In a 10-point scale, we asked buyers in a survey, how important is price to you on a 0 to 10-point scale, 10 being the most important? They ranked it as 7.2. When we asked a group of salespeople, how important is price? They ranked it as 8.3. They ranked it as more important than the customers. All right. So we believe salespeople make a bigger deal out of price than customers.
Well, I think that's a great story. And that's a great example. The example I was thinking of in the book was where the customer was driving around and he saw a house for sale and he really liked it. And he called the listing agent sign, which is not like, because he didn't have a realtor. And the first thing the listing agent did was say, I happen to know that this seller is very motivated to sell and is willing to entertain any offers. And so the point of this is how the salesperson, I would not want that realtor. None of us would want to use that real estate agent. The point of it was the real estate agent is discounting the price before the customer's even made an objection to it, right? And so that's a great example of how that happens. That's a great story, the pressure points. Well, that kind of leads me to how the mortgage coach tool, and this talks about the question that I wanted to ask is going deep on how you stretch the buyer's timeline. So I think you're talking about that a little bit, but stretching the buyer's timeline in terms of how they are going to use the product that you're selling and how the price shopper tries to strip all of that out and just make it about the deal. Talk about that.
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is stretching the buyer's time horizon and enlarging the conversation. We have to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, we as humans are hardwired for short-termism. We want immediate, instant gratification. We want sure things and we want them right now. Here's the challenge when you're trying to sell value. If a buyer is looking at your loan versus a competitive loan, and the competitive loan is 10 basis points or 25 basis points less, they view that discount, that 25 basis points, as an immediate gain. So we've got to get them to think past that, because the real value of partnering with you, if you're a little bit more, is a better end-to-end experience. Maybe you're saving them total cost over the lifetime of the loan, but all of those benefits, those outcomes they experience are in the future. So we've got to transport that buyer to the future. And we can do that by asking questions that cause them to think long-term. You know, for example, you might ask a client when you first meet with them, hey, I understand that you're just starting the process of buying a home, but let's say a year or two from now, when you're in your new home, what would cause you to say, you know what, I'm really glad I partnered with Dave on this loan, right? Getting them to think long-term. Or having that buyer say, okay, well, you're talking to them and say, a year or two from now, what is the ideal outcome? Or throughout this mortgage experience, what's important to you, right? When we're stretching that time horizon, buyers start to think long-term. When they think long-term, they focus more on outcomes. Now, the other part of that is enlarging the conversation. Buyers will oversimplify their needs, right? And if they're just buying a simple mortgage, any mortgage company will do, right? We can't just sell a loan because there's too much competition for just a loan. We've got to sell them on our better overall experience, but we've got to get them to think bigger. People, once they're aware of the complexity of their needs, they will become more open to your value-added solution. And so we've got to ask questions, right, to our customers that highlight this. You know, the people you're meeting with, they're getting ready to make one of the biggest purchases of their life. It's a pretty big moment. There's a lot of there's a lot going on in their mind. And when buyers are presented with all these options and they become confused and they're concerned if they're making the right decisions, your brain will naturally try to simplify things down to its most basic, naked core decision so that they can make it easier. Right now, if they're trying to simplify everything, what are they going to focus on? Interest rates. Right? So we've got to enlarge the conversation, ask bigger questions. Like, what are some of your concerns about making this decision? All right. Or beyond just a loan, you could buy that anywhere. What do you really need from us? Tell me about your previous mortgage experience and what you would do differently. When I think of mortgage experiences, I'm always reminded of the first time that I bought my first house.
Tell us about it.
Oh, it was miserable. It was terrible. All right. And the problem was my first home, I bought it. It was back in right before the real estate market crashed, right before then. Okay. So terrible time to buy your first home, but it was like,
good. You got it at a good price is what you're saying.
It was like the Wild West of the lending days. I think I qualified for some astronomical amount on a mortgage, but when we went through the underwriting process, it was completely just, everything was urgent. Hey, we need this information. We need this. I need a copy of your diploma from where you graduated from school. We need a letter from your employer. And all of these things, it was touch and go, whether I was going to get the loan, whether I wasn't. Here I am, fresh out of college. And it was terrible. But then I look at my most recent experience and it couldn't have been any different. I mean, it was perfect. It was seamless from the very beginning. The mortgage banker, he communicated exactly what I needed to do my part. He was crystal clear on how the process would go, and everything happened exactly how he said it would. And it turned into a pain-free type of experience. Right? And it was great. It couldn't have been, it was like Jekyll and Hyde, yin and yang. It was just the opposite experiences, but it was great.
That's awesome.
Hey, Dave, I have something I want to insert. And I see Coach Todd turned on his camera, but I want to go back to something you said earlier, because one of the founding beliefs we have at Mortgage Coach is that we believe that loan officers should be talking about the family's hopes and dreams, more than about their rates and fees. I mean, that's part of why we designed the total cost analysis. And so a loan officer could find out what the family's hopes and dreams are, how they wanted to build wealth with real estate, and then provide them this total cost analysis so that it's not more than just rates and fees, it's quotes. So two things. One, everybody listening to this, I want to draw you back, and we've promoted it for months now, the lead conversion playbook. And I can tell already, Paul, I'm taking feverish notes, and we've got this lead conversion playbook that's got these 3 guiding principles and these 13 strategies to optimize conversion. And I can tell already that we're going to have to add number 14. There's some great tactics from this, but anybody that's listening to this call where you want to forget about just maximizing your profits, you want to deliver a better service that makes you a more referable loan officer, that helps you get more referrals from your realtors. I mean, one, you got to buy Paul's book. You got to read it. You got to study it. And you do need to go through our lead conversion playbook. And by the way, if you're a manager on this call and you do sales rallies, I personally think this conversation, this topic is what, if you run a referral-based local lender, or you're a branch manager and your loan officers live on referrals, you guys need to go to school on this. You need to be spending all of your time on how do we add more value? How do we have more hopes and dreams conversations with families? And then how do we let them know that we listen to those hopes and dreams? Obviously, I think that's what the total cost analysis. Todd, did you have a question or a comment? I saw you put on your.
Paul kind of crushed my comment. I was really just saying, he said that he talked about really how you've got to kind of push those pressure points by asking better questions. And I kind of feel like that's really where most loan officers fall down. I would draw attention back to Scriptapalooza, where we sort of talked about that, right? Clients ask about price because they don't know what else to ask. And so just keep that in mind as you guys are listening, listen to that. The other part I'd love to have you clarify, Paul, as you said that your mortgage banker made the process crystal clear. You also said that we're supposed to take it as salespeople from a simplistic view that they may have to be more complex. So when they laid out that process to you, did they make it sound like it was pretty complex so that you were bought into the value they were adding, or what did that look like?
So I was making two separate points there. If a buyer, views this decision is too simple. Hey, I just got to go out and get a loan and buy a house. A simplistic view in that sense means they're going to boil the decision down to interest rates. Okay. So if you're enlarging the conversation, hey, tell me about this decision. Beyond just a loan, what do you need from us? What are some of the mission critical issues for this experience? What's going to be important to you? These types of questions get them to think a little bit bigger. And when they think bigger, they're more aware of what's going on, their needs. They're going to be more open to a value-added solution, right? So when we're probing to understand our buyers' needs, we want them to feel and feel some of that pressure, some of the, make them aware of the concerns that they might have. But when we're presenting how we can satisfy those needs, right, we want to reassure them and give them the confidence that we can make that happen, right? That, and sometimes you hear that from many trainers that, hey, let's present a simple solution to solve simple problems. Well, I don't agree with that, right? Because if you just have simple problems or then any provider is going to do, make the buyer aware of some of the complexities, but reassure them on how you can help them and navigate them past that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I've said this before, is as soon as you can get a mortgage with an ATM card, we're all not necessary. So and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So we're here to solve people's problems. And that's really helping people understand what that value, that part of the value. There was a great point in the book, and I didn't send this to you, but a great point in the book was how management can really be like the worst offender of this particular issue of discounting. And I have to be honest, I've done this and I'm never going to do it again. But, I've heard management and leadership at companies come out and say, we're not going to lose a deal to price. So whatever you got to do, get the deal. Talk about the message that sends to the industry. And did it come?
It's that is where, we talk about the two programs here. We've got value-added selling. That's what we help companies do, and crushing price objections is part of it. That's the other book. But when you look at value-added selling, in the new book, we have a whole chapter on how to build and sustain a value-added movement within your organization. We have found that value-added movements fail when it lacks commitment at the very top of the organization.
Sure.
You just mentioned, right? Hey, let's go out there, let's sell on value. But when faced with headwinds, when you're faced with the challenge of, okay, are we willing to walk away from this business because of price? If you don't walk away, it sends the wrong message. Not to say, hey, let's go out there and lose a bunch of business on price. No, let's force our people, let's force our team to apply what they've learned. Let them feel the uncomfortable nature it is to say, this is our price and we're sticking with it. The more of that you do, the better off you're going to be. But there has to be a commitment at the very top of the organization to say, we're not going to discount. Instead of discounting, we're going to choose to sell on value. And here's how we're going to do that. We're going to stretch that time horizon. We're going to enlarge the conversation, and we're going to give it our best effort, right? Because what happens inevitably when you meet with a client and they say, is this your best price, right? And then you say, yes, this is what we're doing. Then they make you feel the pressure. Well, I can get this cheaper up the road. Well, let me go see what we can do. And you knock some price off of the loan. And when you come back, the buyer doesn't have as much confidence in the price. And they're thinking, well, if that was your best price, why didn't you give that to me all along? Right. So there's got to be commitment at the top.
So let me jump in here, Dave. And I want you to also speak to this, because this is a big topic. I mean, let's face it, in our industry, given the dynamics, there's going to be pricing exceptions. I mean, no one's going to take the position that we're not doing price exceptions anymore. But I do believe branch managers, and it really needs to come from the branch manager. Yeah. You need to teach value-added selling. And by the way, you need to hold your sales force accountable to value-added selling. So if you guys have aligned as a branch, you've aligned as a crew, that this is how we value added sell in something like a total cost analysis. It's something that's very manageable. It's easy, hey, you're a branch manager, you've got a scorecard, if loan officers are doing it or not. And then they come to you with a price exception and they haven't followed, let's just say a couple simple imperatives that that they showed up and delivered value before price. You're not as likely to support the loan officer with that price exception. Unless, of course, that loan officer is doing it all right. So, Dave, if you could speak to that just from a pragmatic perspective.
Well, first of all, at the branch manager level, what I would challenge and what we do, I'm really proud of our performance in this regard, because I've always, and this, I don't know where I got this. I think you and I both know Tom Ward really well. I think I got it from Tom Ward, but or at a Duncan event or something, but I heard this and it really rang true. In the absence of value, price is king, right? So if there's no value in what you're doing, then the only thing that matters is price. And when I first got in the industry as a broker, the whole thing was collect a 1% origination fee and get 1% in yield spread, one on the front, one on the back, gross 2 points, 50% was what I earned. That was my deal, right? And so I remember going to a closing once and I had to discount the hell out of a deal, and it was $120,000 loan. And I made a point on it. I was like, I'm sitting at the closing, I'm like getting $600 for this loan. I'm like, yeah, I'm never doing this again. And so, because it was just too much work, and I'm sitting at the closing and I'm like, this is dumb. And from that point on, I studied all of this. The thing was, whenever I lost a deal because of price, I never thought my price is too high, because I was kind of in control of the price. So back in the day, right, we were in control of it. I always thought I didn't show enough value. If I'd have shown more value, I would have gotten the deal, because if I'm just going to lose a deal for $100 or $200 or an eighth in rate, then I'm just not doing my job. I'm not showing the customer enough value where they're like, you're my lender, because that's what you're shooting for in this business, right? They're like, that's what it really comes down to. So as a manager now, and I don't produce anymore, but as a manager now, when I get those price exceptions, this affects my income. And so and it doesn't affect theirs. And I'm not that my guys don't care, because they absolutely do. And everybody wants to sell value, and they want to provide. It isn't just selling value. Let's make that clear. It's about providing value and feeling good about the service that you deliver for families. We make a huge difference in the world. I used to sell pens and I sold video games. Those are the two other businesses I've been in sales doing. This is impactful. Pens and video games, not that impactful. So helping somebody buy a home is a really cool thing to be able to do. So delivering that value, providing that value to consumers is a cool, fun thing. And what happens when I get that, I have two questions that I ask my loan officers when there's a concession. Did you do a total cost analysis? Number one. And did you provide a total cost analysis? Because you can't differentiate yourself at all if all you're doing is sending over fee sheets. You're just like everyone else, and now it's going to only be about the price. And then the second thing I ask them is, did you meet them face to face? At the very least, you should earn that paycheck. I mean, those are the things that you're supposed to be doing that bring in all that value. This is the part where I get all fired up and I get on a soapbox and Todd laughs at me. So,
hey, well, first of all, and by the way, the only edit I have to that, and I hope every branch manager heard what Dave said. And by the way, if you're a loan officer, I'd go back and tell my branch manager, be my accountability partner. If I come and ask for a price exception, did I deliver a total cost analysis? Did I get in person? And by the way, you can't get in person with everybody nowadays, but did you deliver a video or have a live experience where, you guys know Mortgage Coach Live, you can drive it. So there's just no excuse to not deliver value in the way that you deliver your price, and either use video, in person, or a live interactive conversation. If you want to optimize your opportunity, you need to do that. And remember, we've got 13 strategies in our lead conversion playbook. And I hope everybody on this call is buying this book right now. I can just see by the interaction, Paul, that we're going to, need to have you back. If you're watching this video and you have questions for Paul, put them in comments below. Also, like this. If you're getting takeaways, give us a like, share it with others. Todd, I noticed you jumped back on mic and on camera. Did you have something to say?
Well, I would say this. I do have to make a suggestion to Paul because I did get it on CD to listen to because it's not an Audible, but I did just buy it for my whole team and a couple of clients. So I'm super excited to be here. And, some of the stuff that Dave is saying about meeting in person and TCAs, I mean, I'm fist pumping back here because I'm super stoked. But I would love to hear what Paul would say. My experience when I was a regional manager was when we lowered comp to make rates more competitive because loan officers said they couldn't sell it, price exceptions stayed the same. And then we did it again and price exceptions stayed the same. So there is this psychology. I know there's some stuff in it on the book around salespeople that they, regardless of what their price is, they always discount the same. And so what do you say to that when people talk about that? And I know, Dave, you probably have a comment because you talked about your loan officers and discounting on a normal loan versus a down payment grant loan where they're not allowed and how that psychology plays in. So I would just love to talk around that piece.
No. I asked one of my guys, let me tell this, Paul, and then I asked one of my guys, we do bond loans and you can't discount them. You could, but you don't because nobody does, right? So the whole industry, everybody's charging what they charge. And I asked one of my salespeople that question. I go, how come you never discount the bond loans? And his response was really funny. He, with no hesitation, he goes, well, because you can't. I'm like, well, you could. We just said no. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess that you're right. It's in my head. It's in our head, right? It's psychological. Go ahead.
So Dave, and you just hit the nail on the head. The number one reason that salespeople cut their price is because they can, right? Just got to take away the ability to discount. In training, I've been in sales prior to doing this now for 10 years. And we have a rich history, 35 plus years of training salespeople. What we have found is that salespeople will take the path of least resistance. If you have made it clear that you can discount to win business, they're going to go to that. But when you're selling a bond loan or whatever that was, and you can't discount, it's amazing how much more they're forced to sell on value. And once we take the pricing piece out of it and it's no longer an option, they find another way to win. I think it's an old story about Julius Caesar when he was getting ready to go into Rome, right? He brought his soldiers, they were crossing the Rubicon, and he burned the bridge once they crossed the river, right? Therefore, retreat was no longer an option. Do you think the soldiers fought a little bit harder knowing there was no way back? Absolutely. If you cut your people's ability to cut price, you're going to force them to sell value, all right? But you got to be able to provide them the training to do it. Right? You can't just say, hey, go sell value. You can't discount.
Right.
Well, if you've never been trained to sell value and you don't take the time every week to help develop them and coach them, it's unrealistic to expect them to be able to do it.
All right. I remember one of the stories your father was teaching and the president of the company was in the room, and your father advocated this, that I don't think salespeople should have authority to cut price. And the guy interrupted him and said, well, no, I don't know if I agree with that. We give them the ability to cut 20%. And your father asked him, so, well, how much did they cut when they cut? He's like, well, 20%. Well, that's what you told them they could do. Why are you surprised they're doing it? Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's funny. When looks like we're still good on time. What I really talked about, I've got one last thing I want to add before I get to that. The preemptive sales strategies, that's what I really liked about this idea, is developing strategies to preempt the objection, right? And that's why I really enjoyed that part of it. And also the person who's most prepared for a price negotiation is going to do a better job at it or going to have a better outcome. And one of the things that I said last week at the Masters Coach event was, when you get the objection, it shouldn't surprise you that you get one, but it might almost be too late now. And I don't know if you would agree with that, Paul, but I was like, if you've delivered so much value that that the customer would never even consider checking somewhere else, that should be like the standard of the preemptive nature of this. Now, I recognize that there's still going to be a percentage of the population, no matter how much value, they're going to ask about the price. But talk about a preemptive sales strategy that you guys train on.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big ones is changing the conversation from price to cost, or interest rates to cost. When you're, when people are going to meet with a loan, I'm sure, Dave, one of the questions you'll probably get, or one of your people will get, is, hey, Dave, what's the interest rate right now? Where are you at with interest rates? All right, that question will come up early.
Very common.
And if you're just talking interest rates, the only thing you can do is lower it. But if you can change that conversation to cost, you can use some of the tools you guys mentioned already, that total cost analysis. You can talk about total cost on a loan. So, for example, Dave, we'll role play a little bit, okay? You're going to be the customer, and I'll introduce myself. Hey, Dave, how you doing today? And you ask me about interest rates, all right? So go ahead, ask me about interest rates.
So what are your, and this is how the customer does it. What are your rates?
Well, Dave, we'll certainly get into interest rates, and I understand interest rates are going to be one of just many variables you look at when you make this decision, right?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. And you're asking about interest rates because you want to save on the total cost of your loan, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Well, if your concern here is total cost, let's take a few minutes and we'll talk about all the ways that we can help save you on your total cost with this loan, because it's not just with interest rates. Let's talk about what you have to sacrifice, your time, your energy, your effort, the different forms of payments and fees and everything that goes into that. Would you mind if we just conduct a brief total cost analysis, and I'll be able to share with you how we can help save you money?
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
You got to change that conversation.
Go ahead, Dave. I know Dave's going to have something. So finish that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Finish that. You've got to do what?
You've just got to change that conversation from interest rates to total cost. Acknowledge to the buyer that, yeah, I understand that interest rates are going to be one of just many variables, and you're asking about interest rates because you want to save on the total cost of your loan, right? Of course, you're going to agree to that. Then you've changed the conversation to cost and not interest rates.
So Paul, I mean, guys, listen, here's a guy who teaches the best salespeople and top companies in every industry, and he's talking total cost, and I didn't invent, I guess I did invent the total cost analysis, but I did it based off of what the best loan officers do. And the best loan officers forever have been playing a different game. Average loan officers quotes rates and fees. Top loan officers sell hopes and dreams, and they talk about the total cost. And Paul, I'm looking forward to doing more calls together. In the mortgage space, one of the ways that you can do that is you can start to expand the time. So we're going to look over the cost over 3 years, over 5 years. Sure. And you told me that your goal as a family to have your home paid off in 20 years, but yet you're getting a 30-year mortgage. Let me show you a strategy of prepaying your mortgage so that you can pay off your mortgage 10 years faster and be debt-free sooner. So I want everybody listening to this, having Paul on the call to share it is just huge. If you are a branch manager and you want to do some special training around how to improve conversion, how to reduce price exceptions, again, we teach total cost selling. Let us know. We would love to do that. And by the way, if you're on this call and you are any type of manager in the industry and you want to have Paul at your next sales rally, which I highly recommend you do, Paul, how can people get value from you outside of this call? What's the best website? What's the best way to reach out to you? So hopefully we can get you speaking in the mortgage industry more.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Maybe we could work on a trade deal where you could give me a discount on a loan. Not just
I'll let Dave do that.
So I do a lot of keynote presentations, workshops, and that at company meetings. So the best way to get a hold of me, you can visit our website. It's tomreillytraining.com, and that's REILLY. That's how you spell Riley. And it's got some highlight video on there. We've got a lot of articles. While you're there, sign up for our newsletter. We send out a newsletter every couple weeks, and it's all sales related content. In fact, our most recent article is titled, "There's no such thing as an apples to apples comparison," right? Because you've all heard that term, it's apples to apples. Well, there's over 7,500 varieties of apples that are grown worldwide.
Yeah.
It's never just apples to apples. Make sure you sign up for that, and then you'll have our email information and all that contact stuff is there. And I'd be happy to have a conversation with anyone on how we can help out.
And if you're listening to the recording of this, I'll put a link down below. So if you're watching this in YouTube, in the description, there'll be a link to his website and also a link to the book. We've had a lot of people ask for the book. I did put a link to that in our Facebook group. So if you're in our Facebook group where I promoted this call, there's a link right to Amazon to buy the book. But guys, I mean, you're crazy if you don't get on their mailing list and start getting smart on value-added selling. And even if you're killing it, you're the best of the best. Getting smarter, getting better on value-added selling is your best weapon against the disruption that's taking place in this mortgage space. You know, I believe firmly, and I'm going to adjust my quote, technology is not going to replace loan officers, but loan officers who use technology to value-added sell are going to replace loan officers that don't. So that combination of, you know, leveraging tech, being a value-added expert is the key to your future success. So we got about 4 minutes left. Todd Bookstand, did you have a comment or question?
You know, I was getting on for the wrap up. I'm just so excited about this conversation. I think this has been one of the best calls of the year. So, you know, before I'll just shut up after this, but I want to thank, you know, you, Dave, for bringing Paul in, and you, Paul, for taking the time to be there. It's been a blast to be able to be an audience participant, have some of the conversation on Facebook Live, on my phone here down below, and watch. So that's it. This was a top 10 call for me, and I'm going to sign off and let you guys close it out.
Thanks,
One
Todd.
last comment, and then I'll let you close it out, Dave. So one of the things I'm trying to do for our community is, you know, obviously continue to interview the best of the best, people within our industry that are killing it. But I also want to bring in people from outside of our industry. So when Dave Gallegos called me and said, hey, I've got this expert on value-added selling, he's got this great book, which, by the way, I bought your book years ago. When he told me about it, I'm like, I have that book, you know? And so I'm trying to bring more outsiders in. In a few days, I'm going to be interviewing the author of Exponential Organizations. By the way, crazy good book. Stay tuned for that interview. But I just want to throw it out to the community. If there is someone, you know, whether it's an author, a leader, a speaker outside our space that you think can help give the mortgage coach community a competitive advantage, reach out to me. Either post it on our Facebook group, private message me. You guys have my email address, Dave@mortgagecoach. Looking for more leaders from the outside to come in and help the mortgage coach community, which is local referral-based lenders, have a competitive advantage, not just today, but for many years to come. So Mr. Gallegos, I'll let you wrap it up. We got a couple minutes left.
Excellent. Well, this is, Paul, I can't thank you enough. This has been as good, if not better than I had hoped it would be. And I really appreciate the time. I can't wait to meet you sometime. We'll meet face to face. I hope it's at an event soon. But what I said about the book, and what I really, it didn't talk about it. That's what was so interesting. But when I finished reading the book, and when I went to do a training on, I'm going to show it again, the Crush Price Objection book. When I did a training for my sales team at one of our sales meetings on the concepts, and I just went through the 10 realities, facing reality. What I told them all was, this book really challenges you to raise your game as a professional. And it doesn't say that anywhere in there, but that's what I took from it. I don't think it does, maybe it does, but it just, that's what I really was inspired by. I mean, it was a really inspiring book, and that's it. I just wanted to say that, and thank Tom for your father for doing that, for writing that book, and you guys co-authored it, I guess. And so anyway, that's it. It was just, that's the value, and it's got to be a fun job what you're doing. I mean, this has to be a lot of fun. Am I right?
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's such a privilege to be able to go out and share this message of hope. And you hit the nail on the head. This causes you to raise your game. You know this in leadership, that people will rise or fall to the expectation that they are given. Some of the best leaders I've ever worked for, best people, coaches, teachers in my life, they always expected more, and so they got more. Expect more of yourself, right? Because you set your own expectations too. People in ourselves, we rise or fall to those expectations. So expect yourself to do more. Expect your people to do more, and that's what you're going to get.
Excellent.
By the way, that was awesome. I mean, we got all kinds of quotes. People will rise and fall based on the expectations that you expect of them. So with 1 minute, you know, knowing the topic that we've had, Paul, 1 minute of just wisdom and advice you have to the community that get them to just focus. It may be something you've already said, and you just want to put an exclamation mark on it. But for those on this call that, let's just, you know, they could do better. What's the one piece of advice you have for everybody on the call?
You know, the most practical thing to do early on when the buyer focuses on price, change that, or interest rates, change that conversation to total cost. Once you're talking total cost, you begin to expand their mind to what you offer them. Make sure you're asking questions that stretch the buyer's time horizon, that causes them to think in the future, and then ask questions that enlarge the conversation. The whole time you're focusing on long-term outcomes and you're not focused on price. To steer the conversation away from price, we've got to steer it towards something else, and that is your value. So stretch that time horizon, enlarge the conversation, and when you present your solution, give them a few reasons to buy, all right? Not only the services you provide and the experience, but you as the mortgage lender. Our internal research shows that the salesperson, represents 25% of the value. So if you're not answering that question, hey, here's why you should work with me, you're missing out on 25% of the reason why that consumer or customer buys. So give them a reason to work with you personally.
Boom.
Boom. So did you hear that, everybody? Take the conversation from price to total cost analysis. Take it from I deliver rates and fees to I help you accomplish your hopes and dreams, and let me show you how to do it. Gallegos, you the man, buddy. You crushed it. Thank you. Paul, I hope to see you on stage together at an upcoming sales rally, and I'll do my best to make sure that you're on several stages. Mr. Bookspan, good to have you, brother.
Dude, always great to be here. You guys were awesome. Thanks, Gallegos. Thanks, Paul. It was great to meet you virtually.
Absolutely. Great.
Thanks, Paul. It was great. Thank you very much. This was awesome. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So last reminders, everyone, if you got value from this, give it a like and share it with your mortgage friends. And I would just say to everybody on this call, share it with your manager. You know, maybe you didn't like some of the things that were said, like, oh, don't give them the ability to provide a discount. Maybe that wasn't something you wanted to hear as a salesperson, but trust me, that's the kind of advice that's going to help you be more successful. So share this with your manager. Go to your manager and say, hey, be my accountability partner. I want to drop my price exceptions down. I want to do a better job of value-added selling. Go to your manager and say, help me do this together. So hopefully you will share this with your manager. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.